All right. Welcome to the Glacial Habitat Restoration Area webinar. I'm Tally Hamilton with Ducks Unlimited. I'm the regional biologist in the state, and I'm going to be kicking us off here. So the GHRA is 24 townships in Winnebago, Fond du Lac, Dodge, and Columbia counties that is focused on the creation of a patchwork of restored grasslands and wetlands for waterfowl, pheasants, and songbirds. So we've got a lot of groups that have been collaborating over the last year or two to increase habitat on the ground in the GHRA. So thanks to everybody on the screen here, FSA, NRCS, DU, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, Green Lake Sanitary District, the Wisconsin DNR, Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, and Winnebago County and Fond du Lac County. We're gonna have Julie Peterson from Pheasants Forever and Brian Kine from NRCS presenting first about wetland reserve easements. Megan Seidel from the DNR is going to give us a quick update about the VPA HIP program. And then Travis Wilder from Pheasants Forever and Erica Walter from FSA will give us a presentation about the CRP program. So we will have time for questions at the end. If you have any questions, please share them in the chat. And I know we've had some issues with folks getting in tonight, so this recording will be shared afterwards and you'll be able to email us any questions you may have. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Julie and Brian to kick us off.
Awesome, Tally. Thank you. I am going to share my screen here. I am going to start. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome everybody. My name is Julie Peterson. I'm Pheasants Forever wetland biologist in Northeast Wisconsin. And my role is to assist landowners with enrollment into the USDA Wetland Reserve Program. But I also help with management of the easements and monitoring of the easements that already exist. And I will be speaking about the program, some easement basics, goals of the program, a little bit on how to apply. And then Brian will be speaking on the land that is eligible and his projects that he has done in the Fond du Lac area. Brian Kine is a soil conservationist for Natural Resource Conservation Service, and he covers Fond du Lac and Dodge County. So let's keep on going here. The Wisconsin easement team really enrolls folks into the Wetland Reserve Easement Program. The Wetland Reserve Easement Program is the largest wetland restoration and protection program in the U.S. USDA, as many of you know, the Natural Resource Conservation Service houses this program. It's their program, but they rely on these folks to help them with enrolling people, monitoring, technical assistance. And so as a team, we get multiple projects on the ground. I wanted to show you this slide because there are more than just one easement program. In Wisconsin, there are 90,000 acres that are protected through the easement programs, the multiple easement programs that USDA has. We're talking about the wetland program today, and that's about 64,000 acres in Wisconsin. Here's a real nice map of the projects. and the easements on the ground. The red is the WRP projects, and then the green is more of the wetland reserve program projects. Both of these programs are very similar. One was done in the 90s and now it changed names, but very similar program now here in the last couple of years with a newer farm bill. So most of the red dots that you see are in the Southeast Glacial Plains. And this is the highest waterfall priority area. I wanted to just kind of show you the glacial habitat restoration area as Telly described. The USDA has 45 easements in this area. So that's pretty cool already. But on this map, it shows about 15 because our friends at UWSP studied these easements to see what kind of habitat was there. So the goal of the easement program is to protect, restore, and enhance the functions and values of wetland and floodplain ecosystems to attain water quality, holding floodwaters, and to recharge groundwater. I found this fun fact that Wisconsin NRCS wetland easements provide ecosystem services valued at over 11.8 million for flood control, 1.5 million for water supply, and 6.7 million for nutrient recycling per year. Another goal is to provide these easements provide is for habitat for migrating birds and other wetland dependent wildlife, including the black tern that you see above. The turkey nests, a lot of these easements provide nesting habitat for ducks, pheasants, and many other songbirds. And pollinators really rely on these habitats as well. We do get these species, the mallard duck and the pelican, and many more wildlife species like the deer and many other species use the property. Another goal is to protect the native communities. So we restore back those native communities. Here you can see the blue flag iris and a scirpus rush. And then here's a little dragonfly. Often we forget that these easements also grow bugs and wetland plant communities. If you want more wildlife on your property, you need to bring more bugs to your property. And to bring more bugs to your property, you need to plant flowers that bloom from April to October. All right, let's talk about some easement basics because this is an easement program. So we put an easement on the land and then we restore the property back to a wetland. So easement basics, what is it? What is the meaning of property? Real property is land and anything growing on it, attached to it, or built on it, excluding anything that may be severed without injury to the land. So this bundle of pencils represents all the rights and interests that a landowner has. You know, there was a little title on there too, as part of property. The title with regard to land means that someone has legal evidence that they possess certain rights with respect to the land. Having clear title to the land allows program participants to provide assurance to the government that they are offering property that meets the program's needs, purposes, and requirements. NRCS completes a thorough review of title to make sure the agency gets the real property it needs, pays the right people, and identifies any interests that are not compatible with agency needs. So you need clear title to enroll into this program. Many times landowners come to us and they, have a mortgage on their land. Well, they don't really have clear title. They still can apply, but when it comes to paying the landowner for the easement, that money goes to the bank first because they own it. and pays off that mortgage, and then the landowner receives the funds. Easement. An easement is a right of use over the property of another. So as you can see here, easements give someone other than the landowner the legal right to use their property for a specific person. If you look at the orange block, that landowner is getting an easement from property 2 to access the highway. So when property 4, or the orange block, sells land, that access easement to their land goes with it and doesn't stay with the lander. It stays with the land. So if we were going to restore property 2, the blue box, we could not put a wetland easement over the whole blue box. We would have to put a wetland easement on either side of that access easement. We can't put easements on easements. So if you're thinking of some land that might work for this program, think about the utilities that you might have. Is there a pipeline that runs by this property you want to enroll? Is there an overhead utility, phone? Think about those things. Those are kind of the legal things we have to work through in order to put easements on the property. So the landowner has a bundle of pencils that represents all the rights of that property. With clear land title, the landowner owns all of these rights. With a reserve interest deed, the government buys all these rights. But then through the deed, NRCS gives some of those rights back to the landowner. These rights include title, wide enjoyment, control of access, recreational use, subsurface resources and water uses, and water rights. NRCS owns all other rights. These include management and any other rights dictated by the program's objective. So we've purchased, we meaning Uncle Sam, USDA, has purchased all the rights associated with the land. But then through the easement deed, we give back some of those rights to the landowner. So the landowner can sell or otherwise transfer the ownership of the property. Quietly enjoy the property, hunting and fishing. And they also control the access. This is private land. We don't, other properties that have easements on them don't necessarily are public. This is a private easement. And so I recommend many times for landowners, we put up these signs on our easements, and I recommend that landowners put up no trespassing signs because it's privately owned. The other rights are subsurface resources and water rights. Those really don't pertain in Wisconsin, so I'm not really going to talk about them too much, but those are the other rights that the landowner gets back. All right. In the chat, we'll be putting this brochure. It's a nice brochure to help answer more questions about this program. But as you can see, just talking about easements, it's a process and it requires a lot of patience. There's 9 lanes of personnel that this has to go through. So it doesn't happen overnight. It actually takes a while. It takes about 2 to 5 years from when you sign that first offer. So after you apply and receive an offer, then it takes 2 to 5 years before it will actually close. Also, this brochure has a really nice timetable, and it has some steps you can take to think about to make the acquisition process go a little quicker too. So 2 to 5 years. And folks can pick if they want an easement length of 30 years or a forever year easement as well. And a 30-year easement, they do not receive the full payment. They only receive 75% of the payment, whereas a forever easement, they receive the full payment that the USDA is offering. So I always recommend to go, if you're really interested in this program, to go with the forever easement, because the restoration cost is also covered at 100%. In Fond du Lac and in Winnebago counties, current rates for this program is about $8,500 per acre per crop ground. Whereas if you go closer to Dodge and Columbia, it's a little higher per crop ground. But different counties have different rates, and we don't just take crop ground to restore wetlands. We want a nice squared up easement, and sometimes we're enrolling some of the adjacent woodland or wetland, and that has a different rate as well. Many times I work with families, and it's a process. It takes a lot of back and forth to enroll these, but at the end, most of them are very happy they did that and really like that they're leaving a legacy on the landscape, not only for their family, but for the wildlife as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Brian, and he can talk a little bit more about eligibility and the projects in Fond du Lac County.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, I'll turn my video off because I think we might be having a little bit of issues with the audio, so that'll help a little bit. So I don't have any problems on my end. So yeah, I'm Brian Kind, and I've worked with NRCS for 17 years now, and as a technician, conservation technician. So I'm the one that you would see typically come out to the site and take a look at your property and look to see and maybe cite some ideas and give you some ideas on what we could do with property. Sometimes it's not always WRE that we look at. There can be other programs that your property can would be better suited for. But yeah, I would be coming out and taking a look at it, and then we'd pursue different avenues as far as other programs if it gets to that. But yeah, I'll share some slides here as far as what we kind of look at for WRE and what it kind of looks like going through the process of doing some construction. And I'll turn my video off now. So what we're looking at right now is basically the marginal cropland. That's really the best land to restore. So if it's usually waterlogged in the spring and you can't get into it to plant or till later in the spring or early into the summer even, those are the properties that probably would be suited best for wetland restoration. And that's what we look at as, how much of the property is really suited for actually restoring the wetland to what it was before. Most of the time we're looking at that marginal land that the crops are stunted. Next slide, please, Julie. So a lot of times what we're looking for is either drain tiles. A lot of times there's drain tiles within that marginal cropland area. We're looking to restore the wetlands. So the properties that have the drain tiles in or ditches, we're looking at those areas so that we can take those drain tiles out and make them not work anymore. So that regeneration of saturation comes back into the soil, or plugging ditches, so that we can hold that water back so it doesn't drain off as fast. There are a lot of benefits with doing that, from flood control to wildlife habitat. So there's a lot that's basically a meat and potatoes of our WRE program, is to restore it for not just wildlife but also flood control. And the picture you're seeing here is more of the subsurface drain removal. So basically what we do is, after the project has been designed and after all the paperwork has gone through, we can start construction. So we'd be looking for the subsurface drain removal, and basically we take out backhoes. The contractor would take out backhoes, and here you see a tile line being removed. It looks like it might be a clay tile. There's also plastic tiles out there. We don't always have and know where the tiles are, so sometimes we have to take and do a tile investigation. So here you see some clay tiles there, and there's also a plastic tile. So we'll basically dig a trench straight across the field if we think there might be some tiles in there. We go off of aerial photos to look for tiles, or if we're lucky, there might even be a tile map that we can get a hold of. But we'll take those tiles and break them back depending on what the soil type is. Most of the time it's right around 100 feet or so, 150 feet of tile. We'll take the main tile and break that, and then any laterals coming into there, into that main tile, we'll break that back also. Next slide, Julie. Here we see the pump. So a lot of times in that real wet soil, where it's being cropped, they'll want to pump that out via tile system and also the pump. So in some cases with wetland restoration, all we need to do is remove the pump and take some of the tiles out, and that may be enough to restore the wetland. And usually that's the lower cost to restore a wetland. And maybe that's all we need. And next slide. And in this case here, you're seeing a ditch fill. So in some cases we'll take and just either fill the whole ditch completely, and put in some what are called scrapes or shallow water areas. And in some cases we'll just fill the ditch partially and leave some of it open. Next slide. This slide shows a embankment, and in this case we basically put an embankment around on the edge of the field. And if you notice, there is a field on what would be the upper side of the screen. We cannot have any impacts to neighbors or neighboring lands. So you see that there is a ditch running through that center and around that on the one side of the embankment. In that case, that ditch had to be left because the neighboring landowner still had to have they have a tile system, so they still wanted that ditch open, and it's not on the easement property holders property, so they don't have any control over the ditch. So in order to not have any impacts to the neighbor, we put the embankment around, and now you see all that the water that used to drain in the ditch, it's now being held by that embankment. And next slide, please. NRCS, and the easement program does not cost share on ponds. So these scrapes that I'm referring to, they are not looking like something like this. You can't put fish in them. They're shallower, a maximum of 4 feet deep, and they can be anywhere from a quarter of an acre to an acre, typically on the wetland easements that we have. This shows a scrape being dug. Typically, we use a excavator, a dozer, or backhoes, and sometimes we have to remove all the spoil because it is in a potential wetland area. In some cases, we have to remove all the spoil and put it upslope on a hill, or spread it out. If we can spread it out in the vicinity of the scrape if it doesn't cause any issues with runoff or anything like that. We don't necessarily want to divert any water by placing our spoil. We want to keep everything naturally flowing where it used to be flowing, unless for some reason we are creating an embankment, and then we can control the water via water control structures or something like that. Next slide, Julie. This shows a finished scrape. Like I say, it's more of a shallow scrape with 8-to-1 side slopes or flatter. So it's something that you can walk in, and if you duck hunt, you can stand in them without going past your shoulder. Or it's something that if you have a dog, they can easily access the bank and get back up. They aren't steep slopes or anything like that. Next slide.
Brian, this is Tally.
Yeah.
We are at 30 minutes already, so I just want to make sure we've got time for the CRP presentation as well. If we can kind of quickly move through the rest to wrap up.
Sure. Yep. This just shows the seeding in and around the scrape. So then we'll seed the edge. This slide just shows after everything's seeded, we get nice different colors of vegetation and hopefully a lot of wildlife and different insects. Next slide. This also just shows another seeding, typical seeding of what it might look like after. Controlling some of the vegetation, we can use burns, or we can do some cutting just of areas that are maybe need a little bit of weed control. This slide shows a aerial photo of an easement prior to doing anything. The next slide. Next slide is showing what we are looking at as far as putting some embankments along in the easement, and maybe there's a ditch running through there, so we'll kind of block that water up by putting the embankment up and putting some control structures through the embankment. Next slide. And this is a finished product. So you can see where the embankment is. It's a pretty sharp cutoff line there, and that's holding the water back. And we have an outlet to the south for the water to at least be controlled via water control structure, so we aren't impacting any neighbors. This is another easement. We have a ditch running through it, and some ditches run around the edge of it. And this is after the ditches were plugged or closed up completely, and we put some scrapes in along where the ditches were and kind of did a little bit of a snake-like looking scrape along there, along with another one right up in the would be the north east corner. And then also all the corners of the embankment, you see the sign above. We do post the signs where the corners of the easement are. And that's all I have. If you got any questions, feel free to give me or anyone on this conference a call.
Hi, everyone. I just want to interject really quick. My name is Anave Muchko, and I'm a new addition to our Pheasants Forever team. I'm a wetland easement biologist, and I cover Southeast Wisconsin. And I just want to let everybody know that although our 2024 application period has closed, there is always next year. So we are accepting easement applications for 2025. We will drop our contact map in the chat. So my contact info is on there, as well as my colleagues in surrounding areas, and we are always happy to answer any questions that people may have. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Brian and Julie and Anave, for the presentation on the Wetland Reserve Easement Program. We will save questions for the end, since we are running behind here with technical difficulties and everything else. So go ahead and jump right over to Megan with DNR. I will share my screen.
I've got 3 PDFs I'm going to put into the chat. If you can't see it due to the recording, I'm just putting in on our DNR homepage, VPA. If you look up the landowner brochure, frequently asked questions, and the HIP practice rates. I'll add those to there. All right. Hey everyone, thanks for coming out. My name is Megan Seidel. I'm with the DNR, hired as a dual tech position. Part of my job is a public access liaison to help promote the voluntary public access habitat and sentiment program. And from here on out, we just kind of refer to that as VPA HIP. I'm very grateful to experience this program and to hear landowner stories that they've shared in helping others experience the outdoors in new ways. How they got to be part of someone's story of harvesting their first deer or turkey, or viewing a new bird species that they really hadn't otherwise have had the chance to had it not been for the VPA program. So I'm just gonna give a quick update, kind of overview of our program. So the Voluntary Public Access Habitat Incentive Program provides financial incentives to private landowners who open their property to 4 activities. This is going to be public hunting, fishing, trapping, and wildlife observation. So there's 4 liaisons in the state. I myself cover the Hartford region, basically the southeast portion of the state on that map. Once enrolled in our program, DNR staff like myself post VPA signs on the property, as well as registering it on the DNR website. So this is on the bottom right, has a picture of what the signs might look like. So members of the public are then allowed to use the land without having to ask landowner permission. So you wouldn't have to worry about users asking you about access or anything like that. Questions are sent to DNR staff. Additionally, it's important to note that Wisconsin Statute 89552 provides liability protection to landowners from injury or death of individuals participating in outdoor recreational activities on their land. So you can see that at the bottom left of the screen here. Any landowner with property in an eligible county is encouraged to apply. So that would be forest, grassland, wetland, and some ag lands are eligible. Land already under conservation programs like CRP, so we're talking in this meeting, as well as managed forest law with closed status may be eligible. And our priority is given to parcels that have more than 40 acres with at least 25% usable cover. And so within VPA, you're going to be paid at a standard annual lease rate, and this is determined by land type. Ag land is $3 an acre, forest land $15 an acre, and our grassland wetland is kind of updated. You'll notice that on our new page. If you go to that brochure, It's $10 an acre, but also $20 an acre is available for high quality grassland wetland or otherwise enrolled in habitat incentive programs. And then as an upfront lump sum payment that's made within 60 days of signing your lease agreement. And these lease agreements are flexible, both annual and multi-year are available up to 3 years. And this funding comes from the 2018 Farm Bill, which is administered and provided by USDA NRCS. You can go to the next slide, please. So in addition to being paid our standard lease rates, landowners are eligible to apply for financial assistance to create or improve wildlife habitat. So eligible practices may include invasive species control, mowing, native grass and forb establishment, prescribed burning, and a few others. So the connection to the two programs here tonight, VPA HIP can be used as a cost incentive pathway towards your habitat enhancement goals. Keep in mind that these are just a few of the activities on this slide, but there are 2 pages worth of activities that we have offered. And so you may already be doing some of these practices on your property already, but being a part of the VPA HIP program could be a great way to get some work done, also helping mitigate those costs and be more competitive for these programs while not excluding you from WRE and CRP enrollment. Some popular ways that folks have been utilizing VPA is for site prep. And so activities like invasive species removal, brush control, converting land into grassland, and potentially even using burning as a tool to get these activities done. So as we go through these programs tonight, one thing to keep in mind is that WRE seems to have a better transitional flow than CRP. Basically, it has more activity options for you, or in other words, it's just less restrictive. You can enroll CRP land into VPA, but the specific HIP practices can't be double paid for. So if say your site is fresh and new and needs to be prepped for CRP, there are a few HIP activity options for you, but if it's already thoroughly planted and that's finished up, it becomes more difficult to manage that land using HIP activities. In the end, if you discover that, WRE or CRP isn't the best fit based on your goals, just kind of general keep in mind the VPA HIP program as another way to help you reach your habitat goals as either a pathway or an end goal. And all of this information is on our DNR website. Just type in WDNR VPA. It'll take you to our homepage with all of the PDFs that I have put in the chat. I'm happy to take questions at the end. I can try and answer them. I'm fairly new to the position since last fall, so if I can't answer your questions, our coordinator is great to work with, and his information is in the upper left. Otherwise, it's also on the website. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Travis Wilder. I'm a Pheasants Forever biologist. I'm going to talk to you guys along with Erica Walters with FSA about CRP. Can someone let me know if they can see the PowerPoint I'm sharing?
Yes.
Perfect. So today's presentation, we wanted to do more than just taking a look at some of the different practices. We thought it'd be maybe beneficial for folks to kind of get maybe a little bit more of a step-by-step process through what the life cycle of a CRP actually looks like. So like I said, I'm Travis Wilder. I'm a farm bill biologist with Pheasants Forever. And basically what I do is I help landowners with habitat. So whether that's helping facilitate farm bill programs, or just providing assistance with habitat on anyone's property. It's kind of the bread and butter of what I do. And I cover Columbia, Marquette, Green Lake, Fond du Lac, Dodge, Ozaukee, Washington, and Sheboygan counties. This is actually our contact map. So if you are up in Winnebago, part of the GHRA County, your biologist would be Amy Schaefer. But you can see we have quite a bit of the state covered with Farm Bill biologists. I'm going to turn it to Erica so she can introduce herself.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Megan.
Okay, thanks. I apologize. I'm having some network issues, so I'm going to keep my camera off to try to do that. So if I cut, I work at the FSA office. I do CRP, so lots of paperwork mostly. So all CRP questions, they can always come to me and I can distribute them accordingly to who could be the best to answer as well. So yeah.
Perfect. So these are kind of some of the steps we were going to go through today. And we wanted to start with those initial steps, including eligibility and submitting your offer or your application to the FSA office. We wanted to cover suitability and feasibility. Conservation plan, both of those are done by NRCS office. I want to talk about signing the contract, but more specifically kind of the items that are in that packet with the contract. Wanted to touch on implementation, then talk about some of the monitoring and reviews that the NRCS office does, along with talking about mid-management practices, which is required management in the middle of your CRP contract. And then we wanted to talk about the end of your contract, about re-enrollment and reapplying, just kind of some basic questions that maybe you should think about when you get to that stage in your contract. Erica, did you want to do these next few slides about more of the
Yeah,
FSA
that sounds
side?
good. Yep, so we have a couple different kinds of CRP. The one that we're talking about today is the GHRA, but we have many other kinds of CRP that also use very similar rules to go with. So we have our general sign up, our continuous sign up, our CREP program, which is water quality based. We have our safe areas that can be pollinator based, and then this GHRA one. We have highly erodible ones and grasslands for like pastures and grazing too. So those are just the very broad overviews of the sign up types that you can have in CRP. Okay, so what if you're even just considering CRP, a good initial step is to contact your local FSA office. Have an idea of which piece of land you're enrolling or field or something like that, and kind of some of the goals that you have associated with that. Are you worried about erosion? Are you worried about habitat loss or something? Have an idea of what your goal land. There's also that website of the fact sheets of all the different kinds of CRP that's listed on that slide that you can go check out online. Otherwise, any one of us and next slide. Some of the eligibility that we look for that makes you eligible for CRP is for the current farm bill that we have. The area that you're looking at to enroll needs to be cropped 4 out of 6 years between 2012 through 2017. We anticipate that when this current farm bill expires and they make a new one, that those years will change, but that is what it's for this year's sign up. The two, the landowners will need to have owned the land for a minimum of 1 year. Producer needs to meet the adjusted gross income requirements, which is the average of the 3 taxable years. That's less than $900,000. They have to be over 18 and a US citizen, and the suitability and feasibility check, and we'll cover that in the future slide there. So those are some basic eligibility that FSA will go through to make sure that land is eligible before we even would go to any next steps there. Next slide, please. So let's say you picked out your piece of land, you talked to the FSA, you know what you want to do. You want to submit an offer. That includes signing 2 forms, CRP1 and CRP2. These forms go over the type of cover in the sign up, the acre,
Erica,
be.
you are cutting out.
Oh, darn. What part did I get lost on?
We got through cover type, acres, and contract length.
Okay, thank you. So depending on the CRP type, it can be 10 to 15, and that'll be on there too. Who the shareholders are, and the annual payment information. So you would sign that, we call that an offer. And then we essentially put it in their system as an offer. And depending on the sign up you choose, sometimes signups go off of a ranking basis and approval. And sometimes if you just want to be in it, you can get in it. So depending on that, your FSA will let you know what kind of sign up process that is from there. But the first
I think I lost Erica there towards the end, but I'm going to cover now just some of the practices within the GHRA sign up. I'm just going to go through this list pretty quick because most of these presentations do center around the practices. I just wanted to touch on them quickly for you guys though. So the first one there, the shallow water areas for wildlife. That's just like those wetland scrapes that Brian was describing and showed pictures of. It's your small, about acre size, like duck ponds that, no deeper than shoulder length with the, the very shallow side slopes. And the next 2 are your wetland restorations. And those could be pretty similar to like a WRE restoration. To some extent, you're changing hydrology and whatnot for those practices. And the rest of these are all of your grass-based practices. So the CP38E-1 is your introduced grasses and legumes. So that's like your Timothy, orchard grass, brome with some flowers in there, some clovers maybe. The next one is the permanent native grasses. That's the picture on top there is native grasses. So it's your tall, pretty thick with native grasses with a few flowers in there. The other 2, your 25 safes is a rare and declining habitat. So in the GHRA, there's one for tall grass prairie and there's one for oak savanna prairie. So this was mentioned before by Erica. This is kind of one of the first steps that NRCS does. NRCS is the sister agency of FSA. So after an offer is submitted to FSA, someone like me who works out of the NRCS side of the building would then go out into the field to determine, is this practice suitable and feasible? So pretty much what we're looking for is that the existing cover there is not already functioning as the practice being offered in the sign-up. And we have to make sure it's suitable for the practice offered and it's feasible to solve a resource concern. And a lot of these, for especially the grass-based practices, deal with soil erosion because you're under the presumption that it's been in row crops for quite a while. Once it gets to the time of signing your conservation plan, there's actually a lot of information that gets thrown at you all at once. There's a lot of maps in there, including the tract map of the farm that indicates which fields are in CRP. You get a soils map and all of your soils information, and that information gets tied back to an annual payment to you, which Erica will talk about later. You get your seed mix in there for what you're planting. The record of decision is your signature saying that this is the practice I'm deciding to do and I'm agreeing to follow the conservation plan. The schedule of operations is basically telling you year by year what you're required to do and which actions by you will be cost shared. And you'll get job sheets, and those are sheets that give you guidance on how to complete specific parts of your contract. So how to establish your field by planting and how to mow your field, things of that nature. And then there's the CPA 52 NEPA documentation. And pretty much that document is saying that we've looked at all these different aspects of the environment, whether it's vegetative or cultural, you know, we're not going to do anything adversely affecting anything in the environment. Part of your CRP contract is required mid-management practices. If you have a 15-year contract, these would occur in years 6 and 11. And I really wanted to touch on prescribed burning and mowing as options. Those are probably two of the most selected options. And if you look right off the bat, you can see here for the introduced grasses and legumes, which is your CP1 practices, you cannot prescribe burn on those. And if you look down to your CP25 oak savanna practice, that one you can burn, but you can't mow. So right off the bat, if you're thinking about oak savanna, but you know you don't want fire, you might want to pick a different practice. But when your contract is being made, you should really consider if you are going to want to burn or mow your other grass practices. Mowing is probably more selected by NRCS offices because it's a lot cheaper than burning and easier for a landowner to facilitate. Prescribed burning is probably better for your prairies. They're fire-dependent ecosystems and they respond very well to fire, but sometimes it's not feasible and can be very cost restrictive. There's not a lot of restoration companies that burn. And sometimes it's just not feasible depending on the location of where your farm is. If you're close to town or major highways and interstates and stuff, and sometimes your days you actually can burn it are so restrictive too that it just doesn't get done year after year. So I wanted to touch on those for you. I also wanted to go over some implementation dues. Keep all your receipts and invoices for your cost share items, whether that's you rented a seed drill or you contracted mowings or herbiciding for site prep, things of that nature. Make sure you hold on to all of your seed tags because that'll get checked by FSA and NRCS to make sure you planted what you were required to plant. Also follow all the timelines laid out in your conservation plan. Things like your planting date windows. If you plant, say you plant too early than what was indicated in your conservation plan, you might have to then replant later on out of your own pocket. Another thing I want to touch on is to stay on top of your implementation mowings for grass-based practices. So basically what I mean by that is after you plant a prairie, you have to mow weeds off of it for 2, sometimes 3 years, and sometimes that's multiple times a year. You're basically mowing annual weeds back while your prairie is trying to establish, and that's very important in establishing a prairie, is making sure you are doing your post-planting mowings. Erica, if you're able to, could you touch on this cost share slide?
Yes. Okay, so for cost sharing, CRP does cost sharing for establishments. The exact numbers that are authorized for your specific contract will be given to you at the time of sign up, so you'll be able to see what those numbers are. For GHRA contracts specifically, the planting cost share ends up being because it has a 40% incentive tacked onto it. And a lot of our CRP programs do have additional incentives like that too. So that's worth an ask there. The cost share that we do for establishment is broken out into seeding. The third one is the seed cost, and the fourth one is weed control in that first year of planting. So as Travis mentioned, sometimes you have to do weed control for 2 or 3 years after you've planted. We only cost share for that first year. So that second and third year is on you, but we do cost share for that first one. That is aside from your planting or maybe your mid-management there. So let's say your contract has a burn scheduled for year 6. That is not what is included in the yearly maintenance. This is every year we recommend that people walk it at least 2 times a year, if not more, to stay on top of any weeds or noxious weeds or invasives or trees. If you've got a grass practice, you don't want trees in there. Just maintaining the cover to what your contract says. When you do sign up, we do give you sheets of how to control different things. If you have a specific issue that you need help with, always give us a call and we can help you come up with a plan. I know that over the last 2 years, we've seen a big increase in like wild parsnip and stuff like that. So if you have a specific problem, you just give us a call and we can help you come up with a plan to control that.
Perfect. Thanks, Erica. I wanted to touch on some of the monitorings and reviews that NRCS does. There's 3 basic types that we do. The first one is an establishment review, and usually that's done in year 3. It sometimes could be sooner, especially if the landowner is noticing a lot of problems and they want someone out there on site. But essentially what this review is for is to check and see how well your practice is establishing. And if we do deem it established, you kind of lose your ability to mow it any time of year. Once it's established, you can't mow during the primary nesting bird season, which is May 15th through August 1st. So I think it's really important to mow those first couple of years when you can, because once we call it established, you'll lose that option to mow it during what's essentially the growing season for a lot of these plants. We also do some mid-contract management reviews. So that's going to check and see, did you mow it during your mid-contract management year when you were supposed to, or did you get your burn in for those purposes like that? And the last one we do is your expiring contract review. And typically that's done 2 years before your contract expires. And that check is to see, if you were wanting to try to re-enroll this practice, would you be able to re-enroll it right in? Are there any problems that need to be addressed, any invasive species issues, things of that nature, that you would still then have time to get it up to par before it would be re-enrollment time? I also want to talk about some of the considerations when it is time to re-enroll or reapply. Is it eligible to re-enroll? Did that expiring CRP check find a bunch of issues? If it is ineligible, are you able to get it back into compliance by doing some work on it? You just maybe want to switch practices. Sometimes that's an option where, say, you had it in the native grass, but you want to switch it to the tall grass prairie practice. Sometimes we can say, yeah, you can terminate the native grass. We'll start a brand new contract to put it into the tall grass prairie, which is a little bit more diverse of a planting. And another consideration is in the sign up and practice you enrolled in still even offered. The Farm Bill programs change. They're always changing. We're about to get a new Farm Bill too. So things could change a lot even with the new Farm Bill that's coming. It's time for questions for everyone. I'm going to throw into the chat too a couple documents. I'm going to throw in our Farm Bill biologist contact map. I'm also going to throw in a programs guide. This programs guide has some flow charts based on like, this is what my land is and this is what I want it to be, but it also lists out beyond WRE and CRP, a bunch of other programs and organizations that help landowners with habitat and cost share programs. So I'll throw both of those in to the chat.
Folks are welcome to drop any questions in the chat, or please also feel free to unmute and ask me questions that you may have.
Just for the record, this is Brian Kind. My email is actually brian.kind@usda.gov.
Hi, this is Vicki Williams. I had a question about WRE and what the minimum acreages are.
Hey, Vicky, how are you? This is Julie.
Hi,
Good to-
hi, Julie.
Good to see you on this. So the minimum acres, I think we, in our guide, is about 15. You know, the more acres you
50?
have, the better you rate. Oops.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Vicky, or no?
I can, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so 15 are the minimum acres.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
And usually that, you know, the more, when we have more funds, we will, we can take in more projects, right? But if someone has 100 acres versus 15, we usually end up taking with less funds, those higher, you know, acre projects. So right now we have some
Yes.
really good funds for this program. So, yep. The thing about small acreages as well is that you have to be able to restore within the boundary, you know, do some restoration within the boundary of the easement. And so the more you can take in, the more restoration you can do on the property usually.
Great, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for our presenters? Otherwise, we can wrap up and let folks get on with their evenings.
Say thank you.
Thanks for presenting.
Thank you much.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. We did have some technical difficulties to start this off, so thanks everyone who was able to join us. For those who weren't able to, this recording is going to be sent out along with a list of our contacts, and Brian will get your email updated. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Hope you get some more habitat going out on your properties. Really appreciate it, and everyone have a great evening. Thanks.
Bye.